Tim Furey. I'm wearing many hats today. I worked on a few land use projects with the Commission over the years. I serve on the Chamber of Commerce as the immediate past chairman, was the previous chairman of the hospital board, and I served on regional planning for 25 years. So I actually read the whole report, to my wife's chagrin last night. So the first thing I want to note is as you're evolving this in the next few months, and I think it's important that this is the beginning of the evolution of it. I hope it's treated that way, not like we've got this document ready and there's not going to be changes. Remember, it's not only a planning tool. It is going to be the long-term marketing tool for the city of Bristol, which I think Councilman Zappo kind of alluded to. People will use it for their own purposes. Purposes to promote the community, purposes to degrade the community, purposes to attack things, purposes to promote things. So as you're reviewing a lot of the polling information you have there as charts and a lot of the data you've put in there as charts, I'd encourage you to think about what does this do for us here. So you have 4 graphs in there that say Bristol has the lowest return on housing investment of any town within 5 towns. Well, there's a lot of things to say that we have to develop strategies to increase housing values. We may even say we're lagging behind. But if we're poking all the information out there that's going to be on the internet for the next 5 years, that's going to be tough for a lot of our realtors. And in all these markets. Now, I know this hasn't come to the Development Committee of the Chamber of Commerce because I'm on it. Al and I have discussed it. I don't know when his thought is we're going to be in that process after today, but that has not happened. I don't know that anyone sat down with the Bristol Hospital to engage this discussion, but I've had this discussion the last 3 months with Councilman Zappo about the exact issues that were raised when we were doing some other projects, and it would have been very timely if that had already happened. I know the hospital would be very engaged. They would have directed me to be engaged for that thought. So I encourage you, as you're going back through it, say to yourselves, what do these things really add to the book? Can we do these things in a different way that accomplish the same goal for planning purposes, but don't lay something out for the next decade or more since your last plan of development in a way that negatively could be used or impact the community? There's a section in there on ridgeline protection. We're not Meriden. I don't know what that really adds for our community, and if we're going to talk about ridgeline protection, we've got to talk about what does that really affect here. I'm not telling the answer today, but I just want to concentrate on things that mean something. We have 11% of our land remaining undeveloped, and it still talks about a stress point should be a fee in lieu of open space for developing open land if people don't leave open space. Well, to me, in a community like Bristol, if you were out in Thailand or someplace, that may mean something where there's a lot available to develop open space. We have 11%. So what you're saying is the citizens of this community, one of which isn't me, who have kept their land as open space since 1700, we're going to take money from you that we didn't take from barely anyone else. And we have done fee in lieu of open space on a very, very limited basis. I've been doing land use for 32 years in the community. I just think it's inappropriate. I don't like. It's like charging a ticket to the last guy to walk into the dance. I just don't think that should be the stress. Preserving open space, deciding how to preserve open space, but it's like preserving historic properties. We as a community get to decide we want to do that. We have to invest in that, not the guy who has the opportunity to pick his pocket. And we know 2,684 acres of open space. Is that good for a community our size and the acreage our size? Do we have enough open space? The report doesn't discuss that. We may have. If we have a good amount of open space, and our community should be proud of that, which I think we should be, let's say it in the report and say, well, we can take some more opportunities for pocket parks and other things. We've talked about that downtown. I think that's important, but we ought to stress that. I think we should be very proud of our parks. It doesn't, I don't know if it mentions all the work we've done on Rockwall Park and all the great things that have happened. You've got to take those shots here. I just know, very minor thing, the All Heart logo in the plan needs to be updated because they actually adopted one. It's a little bit different. That's a very positive thing. The design review process sounds great in theory, but as a land use lawyer, I just caution you, more bureaucratic stuff, more employees, more whatever. I think there's a lot of ways we could do design review and encouragement, similar to what Mr. Raffanello said, without overlaying 3 more FTEs at City Hall. I really don't want that. There's talk in the report about a diversity council. Doesn't say, you know, reinstituting the diversity council. Doesn't say what it was, what it did, what its goals were. We got lots of committees and things in this community trying to encourage all the diversity and things. I just don't know what that one does within our plan of development. I don't know that we have a problem there. At page 52, it talks about the goal to establish things that create resiliency. Well, that reminds me of my stockbroker in 2008 who said to me, I should say, that reminds me of my former stockbroker in 2008 who just said to me, "Tim, ride the wave," with no thought behind what that meant, and I did, and I lost $100,000, which I've since gained back, by the way. But so just a blanket thing like that is the kind of thing I think that a few speakers talked about, that we need to have more of a plan or a direction. In the downtown section, and it's on page 56, we downplay the role of as low impact of services such as lawyers, one of which I am, and they asked us to leave the downtown in 1962, and now they want us to come back downtown, and we're a block away, doctors, etc. But all those service industries that are downtown now, if there wasn't that, you would have nothing, because that's what's downtown. Tracy Driscoll, Furey, Dunham, and the doctor's offices, we are it, signal left. So all those things are high priority, I agree, but don't downplay a lot of those services remaining and being part, because we employ people, they buy things, and they have been before the demolition of downtown and since the demolition of downtown, the one steady thing besides City Hall that's been down there, and I think you ought to think about addressing that a little bit.
But they were upstairs, not street level.
Many are above now too, with the Tracy Driscoll building, etc. On page 62, it's just very broad about how open spaces should be preserved in conflicts with other provisions you have. On page 69, I think is a glaring separation from where the Central Connecticut Chamber of Commerce and I believe the City Council is going. You talk about our goal is to preserve and encourage the development of white-collar workers in the city of Bristol. Well, unless you start adding a definition of white-collar workers to the high-tech industrial workers that we are unique in the state for having in Central Connecticut, we've made a gross error. We need to salute and yell about all of our small factories, our high-tech industrial. We are strong there, and I will tell you for a fact the Chamber of Commerce, working with the state of Connecticut, working with the city of Bristol, is trying to create that as a node of something that's why you should be here. The German company that was in Farmington is coming here for a reason, and that's almost like poking a stick in their eye. So I think that goes against what we're trying to achieve. Now, I agree, when we talk about modern industrial world, most of the guys working in these factories are really white-collar workers, but they're working on machines, and I also don't want to insult our heritage. If you look at the new logo I just asked you to put in your to replace in here, it now has an industrial cog inside the B, and that's because that's our heritage, and we should be proud of that, and that's what is the essence of what I grew up around in the community. You talk about the enterprise zone, you do a good job with that, but you missed the new statutory zone that encompasses the Southeast Industrial Park for the Yukon high-tech portion. And I think you ought to talk about that in your report, because it's a positive, and you ought to include that zone on that. It's a very minor thing, but I think it's an opportunity to include some information as a marketing tool, which this is as well, for that. From a zoning point of view, it has, which was in the last point of view, about prohibit business expansion onto side street residential streets. So in one section you have a line that says just prohibit it. 2 pages later you have one that says only do that where it's appropriate considering some factors. That language makes sense to me. Prohibit makes none, and then you say only if it's professional offices. Well, we just were able to secure, working with the zoning commission, a limited expansion of a business zone for City True Value Hardware, which is a tremendous business in our community. The zoning commission and this commission, commenting on it, did the right thing and let us do it. Your plan of development, again, wouldn't have allowed that. There are exceptions to every rule, so you use terms like appropriateness and everything. And they were restricted in old, non-conforming lands, and it works out well for the neighborhoods, for the goals of the city, all the way around. And the more consistent language was on page 77 of your regulations. Page 80 is one of the examples. We have housing figures that don't add anything to the plan, but seem to degrade the city of Bristol. In terms of housing, it talks repeatedly about the need for elderly housing. I think that's based on the demographic trends you anticipate coming. But there's no data anywhere in the report about what we have for housing now. And it's my belief, based on what I've worked on with you, to approve some more elderly housing, what's coming down the road. Ed D'Amato will be filing next week for the Jennings School, to use Jennings School for 55 and older housing, a portion of it. Sammy Vasile's got 48 units approved down on Lake Avenue, which he started construction of. Janik just put up a whole bunch of new buildings. The city has just agreed to be working on a contract with a developer for both Bingham and O'Connell School for elderly housing. Billy Delfino has 1 or 2 units on Stafford Avenue that's available for elderly housing. We have Gaylord, we have the Lenzo Towers. So I'm not so sure that's an accurate statement. And I think that you need to, or we need to as a community, talk to those major people who control these lease units, the Janiks, the Delfinos, about what are their occupancy rates, what do they anticipate? Do we think it's enough to handle the demographic trend that we see, or else we may just be throwing up a lot of elderly housing that is detracting from what they can do. I think we can do what's there now. I think there's a demand, but I just query that just seems to be a statement with no view of what is actually available in the community today. In the West End section, you talk about improving public safety, and it's said in a way that, if I was reading it for the first time, it just means it's an unsafe place to be now. And I may be wrong, but I always thought, based on my early discussions with people when we were working on the West End study, that it wasn't an unsafe place to be, but there was a perception, and then the perception was the problem. And if it's one or the other, the report shouldn't reflect it in the negative way. It talks about the need for taking care of our homeless. There's no data about that or any information whatsoever about the status of our homeless. I don't know if any studies or things have been done about that, but just to say it seems to imply we have a larger homeless population that we may or may not have. I don't know the answer to that, but there's a lot of data in this report, and we certainly need to take care of our community, but if it's not accurate, we have to talk about that accurately, because that's a pretty bold statement. And sidewalks, very important. Walkability is important. Both sidewalks and pavement contrast with developing environmentally friendly TSS runoffs and stuff. The new regulations coming out of DEP will cost Bristol an additional $1.3 million a year to complying with, although we're not passing any more unfunded mandates at the state level. $1.3 million. So I think walkability, there's just between walkability and sidewalk. So I think they're going to talk about walkability. There's a lot of creative ways to have walkability. It isn't a hard surface sidewalk, I think. But it's something we ought to at least build into the plan. And as you know, I'm going to be representing a lot of developers who'll be in here saying, guys, you want 80% TSS removal, blah, 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 but you want us to do all these other things too. In terms of the hospital, speaking as a hospital advocate, nice little section, we appreciate it. We should have recognized a long time ago that it's a unique area and there's needs. But I'd like to see, as a marketing tool and as a truth, it beefed up a little bit, as well as the ESPN portion, to recognize that it is 1,800 employees. It does input $170 million a year into our local economy. It is the primary health care resource for the community. And those type of facts and some of the more positive things about the hospital should be in the plan, because A, they deserve it, and B, it's a marketing tool, and it's an opportunity when someone's picking that thing online or thinking about coming here or developing this site, they can see it. And if you talk to major developers, one of the things they do consider when coming into an area is the strength of the healthcare system in the area. So a plan of development is a good place to tout some of those resources, hospital and others. I just think of that as a marketing opportunity. Thank you for bearing with me, but I actually did read the whole thing, so I wanted to get it through. Okay, thank you. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them on behalf of all those hats that I wear. I do think you need, if you haven't, and I don't know what's happened as part of your process, other than what I read in the paper, to engage separately, directly with ESPN, some representative that is in with Alan all the time, about what are the things in our development process we could do better for you. And I know we've treated them very well, because I sit in the meetings and I watch how you all interact with them, which is great. Thank you. Keep doing that. But it's nice to be asked. So I think we should try to engage them. When the mayor of Greenville was here a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't able to attend, but I watched the video of it, one of the things he said is you have to kiss the tuchuses of these major employers and work with them and engage them. That's crucial to the rest of this plan that you've talked about, the public-private partnership. So I think we need to sit down, we need as a group, or through whatever vehicles you choose, to sit with the hospital, sit with the chamber, to sit with ESPN, to sit with representatives of Barnes Group, if for nothing else, to say you did it. It's important. So I agree with Councilman Zappo wholly on that. By the way, thank you for trying to save my old Chippy song, and I do agree with your thoughts. Thank you.